Why is my juniper dropping all this foliage? There are 7 causes for juniper foliage yellowing. Hey, this is Jelle, growing bonsai, and I'm looking at a sick juniper. Or in this video I will go through the reasons why a juniper might be dropping foliage, what you can do to remedy it, basically how do you make sure that your juniper stays healthy. First of all, yellowing of juniper foliage is a natural process. Every single juniper will have yellowing foliage on there. As the juniper grows, the branches start to shade the inner foliage, and inner foliage might slowly start dying off. It is no longer beneficial to the tree. Next to this, the green, they're basically the leaves, and they only last for 3, maybe 4 years, and after that the tree just gives up on them. They turn yellow and the branches go from the nice green into the brown. That process, the yellowing, happens quite instantly. So from one day to the next the tree decides to just drop a whole bunch of the skill. It might therefore look that your tree is in trouble with inside the tree a lot of yellowing happening. But if it really is only the very old and inner skill and not the outer growth, typically it's just the aging of the tree dropping the older foliage for the newer outer one. Keep in mind, if you prune a juniper extensively all the way into the old foliage, this is risky for the health of the tree. So you need to make sure you have strong inner growth before you take these long runners off. A second reason for yellowing of the tree is insect damage. Insects or even spider mites. So the thing to do is to check your juniper, and particularly if old flaking bark is present, it is worth your while to peel some of it off to see whether there's not any scale insects underneath. Scale are seen. Scale are just a few millimeters. They sit on the trunk or the branches and they suck the sap. That can cause yellowing if you have too many of them. Next to that, there's spider mite. Spider mite is almost invisible in light infestations, but what you do, you can just take a piece of white paper, hold it underneath, tap the branch, don't be too gentle, and then just move your hand over the paper. If it comes out completely white, there's no spider mites. If there's 2 or 3 little lines, it's not a problem. If there's dozens of lines, then you know you've got a spider mite infection and you need to treat with something that also works on spider mites, because spiders are not insects, so a regular insecticide won't work. You need arachnicide, something against spider mites. It will be on the package. Just get any commercial product. Just be wary, oil on junipers in the sun is a bad idea, because then your whole tree will go yellow and brown. Well, the third reason why you might get yellowing is the roots. Your tree can be overwatered, the pot can be full of roots, and water stays in there. So if you notice that your tree is not using all that much water and you don't need to water that frequently, that might be the problem. One of the tests is put your nose in the soil after you open it up. It will really smell of something rotting. What you do then? Well, emergency repot comes to mind. You lift the tree from the pot, you shake out the old substrate and you plant it in a new, well, open draining substrate. But that is really quite rare to happen. You really have to water a lot to go overwatering. The risk of underwatering a juniper is typically bigger, especially if it is an open kernel based substrate like this one. I have a little question. I am struggling a little bit with my channel. Of course, I also notice about half of my viewers are not subscribed to my channel. That doesn't help me. So if you've seen more than one of my videos and you actually do enjoy them, consider using that subscribe button down there. And the next reason is actually quite related to the previous one, and that is a root infestation with Phytophthora. What you will see is that the tree drops individual branches and they just die off quite quickly. So it's a fungal infection and it just affects individual branches. And yeah, if I look at this whole tree is affected, so there's not much we can do. Phytophthora is a really tricky disease and I don't know of any real ways to treat it. The fifth reason, no, not a lack of, but too much fertilizer. Particularly if you take liquid or powdered inorganic fertilizer, this is basically just diluted salt. If you add that to a pot and it's really dry, then the tree won't take it all up and the osmotic value of the soil goes up. Basically the roots dry out even though the substrate might be moist, because there's so much diluted salt in the water. So be careful that if you fertilize your tree in the middle of summer, you do so by the instructions and don't go overboard doubling the doses. Sometimes it's better to do half the dose, twice as frequent. That really reduces the risk of over-fertilizing your tree. In some extreme cases, you might find that animals have been eating your tree. Particularly in winter, this is a risk if there's a lot of sap and it's nice and juicy and with lots of sugars. Animals desperate for food under the snow might eat your branches. So that is the 6th reason why your juniper might be going yellow, but that is something you'll see already in spring and not just in the middle of summer. Which brings me to the 7th reason why a tree might actually be doing this. And let me go through the first 6 reasons and show you why I think number 7 is the one that is the problem. Right, so what we're seeing is that there's a lot of yellowing, and the yellowing is inner foliage, but it's not just the inner foliage, it's actually complete branchlets. So this is not the natural aging of the tree. Also, I did a test, there's no pests in there. The soil smells beautiful, so there's no problems there. It's all out, it is throughout the tree, so also here I don't think that I'm dealing with a Phytophthora infection. I haven't been using mineral fertilizer on this tree this year, so I don't think that's the problem. Most of it has been organic, and with organic it's a lot harder to over fertilize. So what can it be? Well, actually, one thing we haven't discussed, and that's number 7, and it has to do with weather. This year we have been seeing enormous temperatures. In fact, we've had 2 heat waves already this year, and temperatures have soared well above 40 Celsius, and that's about 104 Fahrenheit. That's temperatures unheard of in my region. And my junipers, they are in full sun. And what can happen in full sun is the pot gets really hot. Particularly if you then work and you are absent for a few days, then the risk of the pot drying out or the pot getting too hot is there. It is best to shield the pot of your bonsai during these very, very hot phases and the hottest part of the day. Now, I have built a watering installation, an irrigation installation in my garden to make sure that my trees stay nice and humid in the hottest part of the day, but that did not help this time because I only installed it after the first heat wave. Now, the problem with heat damage to the plant is it is not an immediate effect. You don't see it normally within a day or 2. It can take weeks. So I think that is what has happened to this tree. It is now responding, shedding, due to the heat wave earlier this year. Now what am I going to do? I'm not going to do all that much, because what I can see is that on the inside there are still little bits of green. It will drop all of this foliage over the next couple of weeks, and then these branches are going to be fairly bare except for little branches like this one. But this is still too weak to really cut back to. I could take off part of the runners, which would already stimulate this inner growth, but I'm not going to do much more than that. And I think with that we've reached the end. Those were 7 reasons why a juniper might drop its foliage. If you're wondering how I go about wiring and maintaining juniper foliage on a healthy juniper, this might be an interesting video to watch. If you are interested in general what my latest video was, have a look there. This was Jelle, growing bonsai with one unhappy juniper.